ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track, and ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The 4 Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The 4 Seasons, May 1st, only on Netflix.
It's really cool.
Bonjour, hello, and welcome to the Rosbiff Rugby podcast, your one-stop shop for all things French rugby. The Top 14, ProD2, Nationale, the national team, they blur the Champions Cup with Challenge Cups, brilliant town cities, bars, restaurants, food, vino, people, stadia, fans, everything that makes the French rugby experience so fantastic. Rob, how are you today? It's sunny-ish in South London. It looks both where we are.
I'll be honest with you, Richard. I woke up at 11 o'clock. My alarm went off at 7:30. Planned to get up then, and I just couldn't get out of bed. But I can tell you've been in Spain, calling it vino. How was your weekend?
Back. It was fantastic. It must be said, the only regret, I'd say the regret would have been the hangover on Sunday. But I don't think that was so much regret as a necessary evil. The only regret was after having landed in Mallorca and been there for about an hour. I was just like, why am I here longer? This feels like a long way to come for only 3 days. But we had an amazing time. The wedding that we went to was pretty amazing. Yeah, very lively, I would say. The guests and bride and groom and everyone really went for it, I would suggest. And it was it was a real good time. A lot of love in the room, as they say, and a lot of local Mallorcan spirits getting doused, which was
nice. What flavours are we looking at for a local Mallorcan spirit?
Well, I can't remember what it was called, but it was herbal-ish. Imagine like a sort of
like an Amaro,
potentially, maybe not quite as bitter as an Amaro. Like imagine like early learning centre, my first chartreuse, that sort of thing. Far more accessible, sweeter. But they whipped a few of those out towards the end of or after dinner. The dinner itself was amazing, like a great spread of paellas and then like a kind of seafood grill. It was proper stuff.
No oysters for our crony.
No oysters,
clams.
No oysters. I've clams I can deal with. Oysters I've decided, as I think we've discussed on the pod, to park. Although I did actually just see a tweet from the Top 14 as of it was the Champions Cup official account. We were talking about the hot dog stand at the Matmut Atlantique the other week. Well, there was an oyster stand. I've just seen the footage of it as of 6 minutes ago. So
at the Matmut.
Yeah, it does look like it might have been part of like hospitality. Everyone who's eating them has gone for the linen shirt and jumper over the shoulder combo, which would maybe suggest some sort of
quite similar vibe to what you were rocking at the weekend, Richard.
Well, I think I was a bit further ahead of the game.
Crucially, in that, did you see any players in said outfits that could slip into our sartorial 15?
No, not in this. It's all old boys. Whether any of them were players, I couldn't tell you.
What I've decided though from the weekend, just on that, is that if our sartorial 50, you know how like people talk like the Lions will be like Ireland and then swap a few out. I think the sartorial 15 might be Toulon and then just swap a few out. Like we've
Yeah,
discussed it before. Their kind of like match day non-playing member kit is really really nice.
smart, isn't it?
Jaminet was wearing like that khaki top, but he had like a cobalt sky blue faded Toulon cap with just the Toulon crest. It was
Ooh,
quite like to get my hands on one of them. That was a very nice cap.
very agreeable. Yeah, it sounds delightful. Maybe covering up, perhaps,
Yeah.
got off to Turkey in the week. Who knows?
Maybe that's
Who
why he
knows?
wasn't playing. He had a bad concussion. Maybe he thought, well, I've got to give my head's got to rest in other ways. I might as well.
Two birds, one stone.
Yeah.
See what we can do. Before we get into the top 14, as I'm sure anybody who listens regularly to this podcast will probably already know, unfortunately, last week and since, the rugby has rather been overshadowed by the appalling and really tragic news about the passing of Josaia Raisuque, the cast Fiji Sevens Fijian flyer who was scheduled to play for Breve next season. Yeah, just incredibly tragic news, really, really shocking. It sort of, he was involved in a road accident, and it's the sort of thing that really kind of stops you in your tracks. Yeah, I saw there was I didn't manage to catch too much of the rugby live, but I did see some really lovely tributes before the games across the country. But yeah, it just sort of unimaginable, really. And for a player who I feel like has been something of a pod favourite since the inception of this, it's very hard to get your head around. So obviously our thoughts are with Josaia Raisuque's family, friends, loved ones, and the whole sort of cast and rugby community in France beyond.
Yeah, I think it really affected me actually. I think the first kind of celebrity death or kind of person you've never met sort of thing that's affected me for a while. I'm wearing my cast t-shirt today in tribute, as I have most times I've done anything Ros Beefs over the last week. You're right though on like a pod favourite because he features in that. We've talked about it before, the kind of that little clip we have on Instagram and TikTok of why we love ProD2. He is very much part of that for what was a quite controversial action of lifting up the referee, but I think it encapsulated ProD2, and I think for a lot of people like looking around it and seeing lots of tributes over the last few days, encapsulated him. Like he was the kind of joker. He was the kind of life and soul of the team. And while he didn't get loads of game time this year, but when he did, like he was showing signs of just what a phenomenal athlete and rugby player he was. Some of the highlights clips that have been out in tribute, just some of the power and the pace is freakish. And that kind of encapsulates a lot of French rugby. Like there's a big Fijian influence in French rugby, and there has been for a long time. And he was kind of a big part of that community in France, as it were, because he was such a lively character, because the Fijian community in France is so tightly knit. And he kind of encapsulated a lot of the brilliant things that the Fijians bring to French rugby in terms of on-field, just raw athletic, freakish ability, but also off the field, just kind of a culture of its own, but kind of embraced by France, and they embrace the French culture and jovial kind of they're there to have fun sort of thing. And I know he had a bit of a checkered past in some of the off-field stuff, and he left Stade Francais very much under a cloud, which is some pretty rank stuff, really. But I think that's part of it as well. There is a lot of there are some complicated backstories of a lot of these players in France. So he was kind of the epitome of French rugby, and yeah, he was a pod favourite because of the Nevers incident with the ref, and because he played for your boys cast, and because he was just capable of the sublime and the ridiculous within a few minutes of each other. And I think I'm really glad that we kind of got to see, certainly, or the wider world got to see that kind of Saracens game where he was fully turned up, and yeah, Olympic silver medalist. The guy could play as well.
Yeah, phenomenal character and player. And I think as if to underline that, there was actually you can still see it. Cass live streamed it on their YouTube channel. There was a full kind of homage and memorial service that took place on Saturday morning. Obviously, their game against Clermont was understandably postponed. But yeah, lots of tributes. Really lovely moment with a load of the Fijian teammates. So Nakarawara, Kathangi, and Petit-Fours, among a few other Fijians who play at local clubs, doing some sort of like traditional songs on his behalf in
Yeah.
memorial. And then they also did like a kind of montage of his career on and off the field with, you know, highlights and sort of little backstage bits. And just an incredible character. They also had a video tribute from Laurent Milot. Do you know who that is?
No, I don't.
He was the referee that got lifted by Raisuqe. So
Really?
they had that clip, and then they had a few kind of kind words from him over it, which I thought was actually pretty spot on. It was very
That's
nicely
amazing.
done. So yeah, it's awful news, but clearly a much loved and much respected rugby player, and I'm sure his memory will live on. Yeah, for many reasons.
Yeah. Rest in peace. Or as I saw, I think on Abraham Papali's post, rest in love, which I thought was a kind of nice touch, a kind of slightly more different. I don't know whether that's a kind of South Sea Island kind of take on it, but yeah, that's a kind of nice way to put it.
Absolutely.
Certainly to his wife as well.
Yeah, incredibly tragic. So yes, I suppose everything pales a little bit into insignificance, but there were some noteworthy games in the top 14, and we'll come on to ProD2 a little bit later. None more so in terms of significance in the league standings than Perpignan versus Stade Francais. And as a round for the top 14, I can't remember, with the exception of I think the last two games, the late kickoffs, which had a little bit of a blowout vibe about them. The rest of it was incredibly nipped tuck with a 1-pointer, a 2-pointer, a draw, and Stade Francais did not prevail in this away at the Stade Mijoral.
I was kind of catching up on the scores after cricket. So all the four multiplex games, you don't need to be much of a rugby fan to understand. I was kind of saying, like, oh my God, like across 4 games, the total margin was 5 points. You don't need to be much of a rugby fan to know that is incredibly squeaky. The big one was that was all the focus really was on the Perpignan Stade Francais one. And yeah, I think Perpignan probably the better side, just from what I've seen. Discipline for Stade Francais again. Brooksy clocked one early doors. Have you seen that yellow card?
Yeah, it was a little bit. It was not a huge amount of malice, but it was it Pesonti?
Pesonti, yeah. But that is base. It ends up almost being like a full headbutt because of the way the kind of dynamics of the tackle. But yeah,
he did take a bit of a blow.
3 yellows for Stade Francais again. They're just in a battle with Racing, and Bayonne are a little bit of a sneaky one for cards, I have to say. They had a good card off against Racing. A fantastic try by Villart in
it was a lovely try.
This game, which is probably the try of the weekend. Well, maybe 2 us over. But couple like a missed kick towards the end from Zach Henry, tough one. But also Alan missed a few kicks, or a kick that was very gettable. Yeah, I don't know what you want to say about this one.
Yeah, I think it's obviously it's so important, but it almost feels from the outside, and I didn't watch the whole game, so this is probably slightly off the mark, but it just feels like another like real hammer blow for Stade Francais, and the fact they've been so poor away from home, and yet in a big game against a team that pride themselves at home, albeit they're in a similar spot, have nearly snuck it, and they've had 3 yellow cards, and they've missed a kick, albeit a tough one towards the end. And it's just every kind of inkling you think is Stade Francais are going to find a way out. They seem to find a way to get themselves back in the mire. And I mean, one thing which did stand out was Makalu's interception try.
Amazing.
You don't see many scrum halves get intercepted behind the 5-meter line.
Yeah.
It's actually.
Are we counting that as an own try?
I think not quite. I think in another season where there hadn't been such bountiful, proper own tries, it'd be up there. But I don't think it's going to make the cut this time. But it's a hell of it. Like it's obviously there's a little bit of luck involved, but it's an unbelievable like effort and read just to go, fuck it, I'm going to go and try and like snaffle this. But yeah, it's tough for Stade Francais, and they're just not moving up the table.
Their second point away from home.
Extraordinary.
I think on the feeling I got from this, and I have probably felt this for a couple of weeks, is that Perpignan have got something. Like they've got, it feels, a game plan. the way that team is set up, they've got that pack. They've got Van Tonder back first time since September. He was brilliant, which is key. You've got Tuolangi off the bench. They've got now big blokes that they can bring off the bench. Like, I know Berrier was on the bench. Well, in this, they brought Lamb, who was great off the bench against Van. They can bring Berrier off. They can bring Tuolangi off, Ceccarelli. They've got big blokes that can bring off the bench. And then their back line, you've got the Fijians, you've got De La Fuente, and then you've got a couple of playmakers. And Hall giving it a bit of pace at 9 in absence of Ekashard. You've kind of got big blokes, and then they're going to try and play with pace. And I quite like that as a game plan. They've got good goal kickers, whether it's Delpy or Allen are two of the best in the league in terms of percentages. It seems like there's something there, and they are now also 3 points clear. With Stade Francais, I don't have that feeling. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't quite, they just cock it up so often. Like the discipline as well is abject. And it just, I don't quite see a game plan or a cohesion there that possibly the other, certainly Van as well, have. Van's game plan is very, very simple, but they've got one.
Yeah.
And I just don't quite see that. Henry has played well the last couple of weeks and he's doing his best, but it's almost like there's only so much you can do in that game plan with the kind of quality of ball he's getting. Of kind of, they're not using their back line really. Real
lack of cohesion. There has been for ages, which is, I know we've spoken about how well they did in the top 14 last year, but it's such a, from a team that last year seemed to have such a clear identity, like really, brilliantly organised defensively, really organised, almost kind of playing a little bit within themselves, if it makes sense. They were kind of very much the sort of the antidote to the Toulouse flair and that sort of thing at the top of the table last year. It just, at some point I have to have a proper look through and try and work out what's going on, because it's one of the most extraordinary falls from grace I can think of in anything, to be honest with you.
And we've said this numerous times now, the second biggest budget in the league and potentially over the salary cap. And the guy, do you remember a while back, we were like, we're trying to work out who the players were that were nudging them over. The one I've seen is Johan Tanga. He's like the real big, and he's barely played.
Yeah, but it was Tanga and Carbonell were the two I'd seen rumoured as like the real kind of marquee signings. It's a strange one. I suppose the thing that's perhaps a little bit of a saving grace, and I know we're going to do sort of a bit of a preview in a sec. They do have 2 home games to come.
Yeah,
one against Lyon next week, who you'd imagine will have, certainly based on their selection this week, more than one eye on their Challenge Cup final, and then they finish at home to Cast, which
I think they do just have the more favourable run-in, depending on how you cut it. But do you want to go to Van, or do you want to kind of... Yeah, let's go to Van.
Yeah, let's go to Van, who... There've been a few if, buts and maybes at Van this year, haven't there? There've been games that... I mean, the one we went to, last kick of the game, Tommy Allen against Perpignan.
That was also 10 points up with, 10 minutes ago or something?
That was somewhat more of an implosion, wasn't it? There was obviously the balls up at home to Bordeaux when they took a massive lead and couldn't hold on. And then Clermont, I think they lost by a point too, and probably
they couldn't kept going backwards when they were trying to manufacture the drop goal, weren't they?
Yeah, and they've been killed again on the buzzer by what must be said is a fabulous drop goal from Antoine Astoy.
I saw the things we reference quite a lot. There's the Rugby Rama Team of the Week, and there's the top 14, like 3 players of the round. Yeah. And I think there's a little bit of by numbers here of just looking at scorecards, which is fine because you can't always watch every single game, especially when they put them out like Monday morning or whatever. Antoine Astoy was in that top 3 players of the weekend for the top 14. He had a very average game. Like, he was kicking balls dead, he missed a couple of kicks, and also you could argue that his crossfield kick for the Lades try, which
the little
Bosmoran does a lovely flick back. Bosmoran's starting to come into it, kind of started to
he is
get a bit more comfortable, I think. And you could argue that could have been a bit of a better crossfield kick, but that drop goal it's a brilliant drop goal because it's a snap decision, it's bang on the 80 minutes, they're quite a long way out, and he nails it.
Yeah.
We can kind of shoehorn some theories into it, like champion qualities, and Van don't have that kind of top level test match experience. Like, you look at that and you've got the best passer of the ball in the top 14 giving him that pass, or I would say the best passer of all in top 14 in Kerbalo, giving him that pass, and he's got, because it's Kerbalo, he can go a long way back. There's no risk of a charge down, and they've got the decision making there. You've got a World Cup winning All Black. You've got a France player that played in the World Cup when they were favourites. It's two guys who have been there and done it a little bit. Although apparently I think that was Antoine Hastoy's first drop goal in his career, which I am going to fact check. Yeah.
Wow. Decent execution. Yeah.
But you could just say it's maybe it could also be luck. Do you know what I mean?
I think they
just happen to get it right.
Yeah. You quite often see that go full paper bag and go nowhere, or it gets shanked or charged down or whatever. I think, credit where it's due for the execution. It's unbelievable. And it's mad to think at the start of the season you would have seen a La Rochelle side quite that jubilant, having beaten Van, and also having come within that sort of distance of nearly having had the double done over them. It's just another. I feel for Van. It's 2 or 3 legit wins kind of snatched away at the very last minute, and from here on out, they're still going to have a chance, aren't they? Because they're playing some pretty good rugby, but I think they've only got one more at the Rabin, which is against Pau.
Should be 4 points. I say with a Pau hat on. Talking of Pau, Antoine Hastoy, it was his first drop goal for La Rochelle. It was his second one. He scored 2 for Pau, one of which we saw. The 6th of November 2021 at home to Biarritz.
Against Biarritz. There you go.
He was brilliant in that game, to be fair. That was when we first kind of discovered him, wasn't he? He was fantastic.
He was the coming man.
What I would say on Van, I mentioned their game plan is pretty simple. I think in this game, they are a completely different team, and they are arguably entirely reliant on Francis Saili. He has been so good this season. We're probably still like almost 2 months away from doing our team of the season, but I've started to kind of put players into position. I've started to have a think about, and it's hard to think of a guy that's been so good so often. And you look at this game, they didn't have him for the first 10 minutes because he was off within a minute for a yellow card, which on first viewing, like, oh, that's a bit harsh. And then you see, because Hastoy basically sees him coming and kind of ducks, and Saili is also swinging his arm, but it's kind of ducking into a swinging arm. So I thought it was harsh. And then it's actually, no, the force of that arm is definitely worth something. But I think, so they were, 12-3 down with him off the field in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Then he got taken off around 5th when Van went up, and I could be kind of putting 2 and 2 together and making 5 here. But when Van went up at 52 minutes, that's when he went off. And then he came back on after the missed conversion from Hastoy at 71. So Van then take the lead again with him on. And it could be, I'm using the facts to support my argument erroneously, but you're kind of like, hang on, is there a backs version of Saili and a forwards version of Saili? Like, it's that kind of basically the first carrier in every time that they carry. And also, like, he's creating so much and defending, like, making so many tackles as well. Just feels like they can't do anything with it. They can't get over the gain line without him. They're not going to create anything without him. That sort of thing. Like, just brilliant player. Very, very simple game plan. Quite boring, if we're honest. And this was a fairly low quality game. There was a lot of kicking, a lot of kind of big blokes trying to be physical. La Rochelle do still have a little bit about them with Boudon, Jegu.
Yeah.
Bit of dynamism they've got a bit of dynamism in that Aldrit as well. In that back row that you don't get from Callum Mathony, Edwards and Gorson.
No. And to be fair to that, nor would you expect it. Come up on a tiny budget from and I also think like part of that game plan is because of the budget. Because if you look at Bayonne when they first came back up, it was Lopez and Machino just kicking them around the park. Yeah. The other team that we've spoken a little bit about, previously at the bottom, but appear to kind of be clear, although they do still reside in 11th, are Racing, who drew for the second time this year, both at home, I think. The last one was to Lyon, wasn't it? And could well have lost. The Joris Sagons having nailed an even better drop goal. I don't know if you've seen that one.
It's a really cool drop goal because it gets charged down, doesn't it?
And it's from a decent way out. So I don't know how far it was going before it got a little flick on and then hit the crossbar.
bounced over
on the angle. All sorts going on with that. But having nailed that and then nailed one from the touchline, he missed. I think it was the last kick of the game, wasn't it?
40 meters out, fairly straight, like literally, like
regs.
You picture Josaia Raisuque this season kicking a goal, and that's basically where he's kicking it from. So we can't talk about this game without talking about the Tuasova try. It's amazing.
Incredible. It is incredible.
Also, like,
bodies.
Fair enough, fending off I think he fends off like Jean Musquez or like Guillaume Rouet. But towards the end, there is a hit that comes in from a certain Manu Tuilagi.
He gets bumped
at thigh height, and it's literally Tuilagi like hits his thigh and just hits the deck. Like Tuasova is just concrete. And then he obviously like any other player in the world like does that and is like, oh my God, I've done something amazing. And he's just like, he gets up and he's like head down, like, yeah, cool, next job.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say in the case, and if you haven't seen that try, go and have a look. It's not the sort of thing you see in professional rugby very often. It's that kind of reminder. I genuinely think there are, in top level rugby, that there are fewer than a handful of players that can do that sort of thing. And it just so happens
2 of them were on this pitch. And one of them got bumped.
One of them got absolutely crunched in it as well. It's just raw power and angry running and limbs everything.
He needs to go on that run it straight thing.
Oh, I saw a clip of that the other day. It looks what is that about?
It's basically I saw I think it was Tom Burgess running at Nemani Nandolo, and I was like, oh, Tom Burgess in rugby league used to drop the ball the whole time. He runs at him and he fucking flattens Nandolo, and it's like, oh my God. Nandolo is one of the bigger freaks to have ever played this century, to have played rugby union, and some lad from Bradford has just flattened him. Anyway, we digress. Good to see Racing with a few cards though. Tuasova did get one for an early tackle, which I think was semi-harsh. Nice try from Jean Musquez. It was a weird game,
yes, it was.
I think, this game. But they should be clear now, right? Like they are.
Yes, I don't think they're getting.
They are 10. They are 10 clear of Stade. So Stade are currently in the access match slot. Racing are 10 clear with 3 games to go. I just can't see Racing. I can't see Stade winning 2 more games, 2 or maybe even 3 more games. Yeah,
agreed.
And then the final team that was in the reckoning, which we've referenced very briefly, was Po, who were relatively good value for this. Po and I think Van are not second half teams. And I think there's an element of, Van you'd expect, fitness, conditioning, they're not used to the top 14. Po is a young side. They have got better, but they still struggle back end of games. I say it was relatively comfortable. They needed a 76th minute penalty from Dabanya, but I think Desperez missed he missed a conversion. I think he missed 3 penalties, 2 hit the post, and I think a try might have come from 1, but definitely not his, having been player of the month for Po in April and his goal kicking being fantastic. He was not fantastic in this game, but Po played some good stuff. They kind of won scrum penalties, they mauled tries. I think the big conversation here is actually about Lyon and their team selection.
I was really, really surprised. I know they just qualified for the Challenge Cup final, but given where they were in the league, and with no disrespect to Po, given the opposition as well,
who have won in the last 12 months, have won 1 away game.
Yeah, I can't get my head around it, and they've now kind of slid out of those barrage places, have been overtaken by La Rochelle and Montpellier, who obviously beat Bordeaux.
3 behind
night.
Both of them.
And Cast and Clermont have a game in hand there. So I found the whole thing, and I don't know if there's more to it. They're just going all in on the Challenge Cup and giving guys 2 weeks off. I don't know, but it was not the side I was expecting.
Maybe Gazal is because Brad Webber was on commentary on Sunday night, who I thought was really good actually, and he was talking about how Stade were playing Lyon next week, I think, and there was a kind of joke between him and Robbie Knock that maybe there'd be a text to Karim Gazal to pick a weakened side, pick the Espoirs for the game at Stade Jean-Bouin. But I don't know, maybe Gazal is actually kind of keeping the big guns so that he can have a big FU to Stade Francais and the Stade Francais side. But it wasn't like it's a proper shags that, there's all well and good kind of, maybe you kind of put Kuyo on the bench or whatever. Starters wise, it was Mariku, Chapter has played a lot of 15. maybe one or two of the forwards, I think. A lot of like names that have barely played any rugby. And they surely would have known that Poe were going to get at least Gaetan back. They probably would have known that Maddox was going to come back. So you've got a Poe side that have, and Lucas Ray's been back. Like, they suddenly kind of got all their big names back, pretty much, apart from Joe Simmons MBE. You should have known that they were going to go fairly strong for this, because they've got nothing else to play for other than their own survival in top 14. Players coming back. Strange, really strange. Great news for Poe, obviously. Second away win of the season. They are now 11 clear of Stade Francais. They've got an interesting set of fixtures, but again, kind of like Racing, they should be far enough ahead of Stade and Van to, because that, if they hadn't won that Van away game suddenly looks quite key. But they've 100%. Various points Poe have managed to build a buffer ahead of. I
think this is as you said, we said it a couple of weeks ago. You were like, there's a real chance Poe don't win another game from here, and they can get dragged in quickly. Whereas I think this gives them just that little leg up that is needed, perhaps.
Yeah, which they've managed to do periodically throughout, really.
Yeah, absolutely. They deserve to be clear of that bottom pack without a shadow of a doubt. Speaking of slightly weakened sides with one eye on Europe, on European glory, Bordeaux got a bit of a spanking down at Montpellier, 46-27. They were 31-3 down within half an hour in this game as well, which is getting on for, what could the damage be sort of vibes. And as you mentioned earlier, Montpellier have just snuck up into that last barrage spot currently, just tucked in behind there on Cass, albeit having played one more game. Yeah, doing pretty well. Anthony Boutier, I think it was at 10.
Yeah, Anthony Boutier, I think that was one of the big stories for me. Anthony Boutier at 10. Hugo Royce not on the infirmary list. I kind of thought, no hog, this is Hugo Royce's chance to grab the team by the balls and not even making the squad, which is a shame because it feels like a good chance to blood a youngster or at least give him some game time off the bench. But the Virat Kohli, Anthony Boutier combo
worked nicely.
Leo Colley, who Brad Webber was calling Kohli, presumably a big Virat fan. Leo Colley was fantastic. His box kicking was great. I'd say there were 4 players in this that were just phenomenal, which was Colley, Nushi, Mostan, and Boutier. Some of Boutier's kicking we know is fantastic. But he looked good at 10. He looked like a proper fly half, and actually running a bit more than they have done in the past. But obviously, similar game plan with a fly half who's got a massive boot as when they had Hoggy at 10. I thought Leo Colley was great. Some of his box kicking was fantastic. It's a simple game plan. But Nushi was doing absolutely everything, running over people, line out work, tight work, offloading. Yeah, it was like that famous Dylan Lade one. A slightly budget version of the famous Lades one back when he was in the Stormers against Chiefs. And Mustan was great, really active, got off his wing, good finisher, quick, cool.
Former Bordeaux player?
Yeah, former Bordeaux player. So they've got two wingers that, because they've not seen much of Madosh.
I was thinking that. Hopefully it's, I don't know, hopefully injured. I mean, in the sense of, I'd love to think that he hasn't just fallen totally out of favour, because he's such an amazing player when he gets it right.
The crossfield kick, George Bridge has been underwhelming, I'd say. That he strikes me as a player that was good because he happened to be playing in the Crusaders and the All Blacks. I also think he's a bit of a loose cannon, so maybe he's just enjoying France. But the crossfield kick, he is very good under the high ball still, and the crossfield kick from Boutier to Bridge for that try is about as pinpoint as you can get in terms of how flat it was and how risky it was. It was lovely. Also, Christopher Tolifer playing tight head in this one off the bench, which was...
Oh, was it?
And actually managed to get Taufa re-subbed, I think, for Boniface. But yeah, well done Montpellier. They've got an interesting run-in, but we'll do the run-in in a bit. The bigger game, the big showpiece game of the weekend was Toulon v Toulouse, which, quite frankly, it was ruined by the referee, I'd say. I'm not one to say refs ruin games or decisions ruin games. Obviously, there's a 34-point margin here. Like, that, it's hard to say that was all down to the referee. However, and actually somehow the penalties conceded, there was only 14 for Toulon and 11 for Toulouse, which felt not what I was seeing with my eyes. Just so sharp on the whistle against Toulon. They were down to 13 men within 9 minutes. The Aberdeen yellow card, I don't know what was for, but I think it was like diving over a ruck near the line, but to kind of dish out a yellow card like that within 8 minutes is interesting. The first Serran one, he is clearly trying to drag it down. I guess the debate there is over the penalty try because they still get the ball down. Do you give? Surely you just bin the player. So Serran gets the yellow, and I think that yellow kind of fair enough because it's quite cynical. But Toulon were kind of chasing the game from that point. They get to 13-14, which is good at half time. But the key point before, two things in that first half. Paul Costs on Baptiste Serran. No, don't think it was on Baptiste Serran. Can't remember who it was on. But Paul Costs tackle on 24 minutes. Have you seen it?
Over the horizontal net?
Mate, not even like basically vertical. I don't know how that. I don't know who the commentator was because it wasn't Angus Torode or Robbie Knock. It was the other one. I don't know. I can't remember his name. But he was like, when Serran got the second yellow for the red, it's like, it seems bizarre that he is now off the field for the rest of the game, but Cost isn't. Because the whole point of these cards, for red cards, and it started with Sam Warburton and Vincent Clerc, the tip tackle, you land on your neck, that's dangerous. That is potentially life-threatening. You are giving that card in the same way for these high tackles to change the behaviour and prevent it happening. Paul Cost has done this already this season. There was one spear tackle or over the horizontal earlier on in the season. I can't remember it, but I feel like he got a yellow and was quite lucky. Yeah. The only reason why he doesn't get the red is because he lands on his shoulder, which is basically because he's just trying to get his arm out. It is very, very close to him landing on his head. Yeah. And he's driving it downwards. It is about a stonewall red card. Pretty black and white. As you will see, for a tip tackle at least. He should be off the field. Like, okay, fine. They still go down to 14 for 10 minutes. And Toulon scoring that time. The Serran second yellow, this goes back to should the whole wider debate of should two yellows for different offences be a red card in rugby? Because red cards should be for foul play, really. The only reason why we have two yellows equals a red in rugby is because of football, basically. And I would say, people are saying, have you seen this, the second yellow?
I haven't. I actually haven't seen this. I've seen debate. I saw my phone going off about it, but enlighten me.
So
I was also, sorry, just while you explain that, I was just re-looking at the Paul Costs one, and the pictures are so blatant. Like, yeah, it's extraordinary.
So it's just before half time. I think Toulon give away a penalty for offside. There's a tap and go, and they're kind of going towards the line. They are on the line, and Merkler is about to pick up the ball and dot it down, but he knocks it on at the base. And actually, I think he puts it down, but there's a knock on before that. And the Toulon players are like, oh, he's knocked it on. So they go and look, and they look if it's a knock on or if there's a deliberate act. There is a foot that happens to hit the ball around the time that Merkler picks up the ball. That foot belongs to Baptiste Serran, who has already received a yellow card. And it is decreed after a couple of replays that foot was, from that Baptiste Serran, was deliberate, and the commentator, again, I can't remember who it was like, I think they should probably have another look at that to see how deliberate it was. Basically, Serran he can't see the ball. No doubt does Serran's boot kind of flick up and happen to get into the area of the ball, perhaps slightly unnaturally. However, he can't see the ball. He also has the weight of Josh Brennan coming onto him that he's trying to evade. If he is trying to get the ball, he has done it unsighted and timed it absolutely perfectly. And it's kind of like, I don't know.
He's pretty good, though.
He is good. He's a magician. He is a magician. And this is the proof that he is, because people are really conclusive about this being deliberate. And the fact he's unsighted and trying to wriggle out of under the weight of an 18 stone, 19 stone man and times it perfectly, magic. I think, okay, you could say it's cynical, but it just feels wrong that a bloke is then off the field for something that is, you can't, in those images, you can't determine intention.
Yeah.
Like we talk about like red card and malice and like, I think penalty, fine. Penalty, absolutely. But I think to categorically say it's intentional, therefore it's a yellow card is a stretch. And the fact that yellow then leads to a red is unjust.
Very unjust.
So it's 13-14 at halftime, but Toulon are down to 14. They've lost their best player, their playmaker. They did at halftime bring on Donglot, and they also brought on Bigger, which I quite liked as a move, kind of bringing on another, like an actual leader and playmaker. And it finished, the second half would have been 36-3. to Toulouse. Toulouse did play some wonderful rugby. The Barrage try with an offload round the back of the defender from Capuozzo was fantastic. Saito was brilliant and made the team of the week. I thought he played with really, really good pace. The man who seemingly can do everything but nothing, Paul Grau, stepped in at 10 from 20 minutes. So Entermac went off with a HIA.
Yeah.
Paul Grau played 10. He missed a few conversions. He was absolutely nailing it, but just nowhere near the posts. Striking it gloriously about 10 metres wide. But he did eventually find his range and started slotting them. Nice. Barassi was great. Lebel scored a brilliant try. They played some brilliant rugby. But I do think the more the game went on, the more it was like Toulon got that sense of
they're playing that kind of unjustness that then leads to I know exactly
every time there's a player
like, well, what's the point? Like,
yeah, every time the player's like not releasing or someone's gone straight off their feet or sealed off, and you're like, I mean, I'm a neutral in this game. I was starting to be on. I wanted Toulon to be the better side because they're an underdog. Quite like the fact that it'd be quite cool if they challenged Bordeaux for the second place. Blah blah blah. I felt like I was on their side because it just felt. It's like when I feel like we've used this reference before when you're in cricket, when like you're convinced the umpire is just on their side and he's never going to give them out when you're bowling, and it's just like, well, what's the point in appealing almost? And they did it definitely. Toulon, yes, mentally should they be. If they're going to win championships, they've got to be mentally stronger than that, blah, blah, blah. But I do think I can understand where they came from. Toulouse were great, but my God, they were helped out. I don't think this is quite the implosion from Toulon that it looks like. And I don't think it's quite the, oh my God, Toulouse are unbelievable. Yeah, I don't think it's quite that, which has been a lot of people looking at scoreline and being like, Toulouse, unbelievable. This is the depth. Like, look at the team they sent. Look at the team Bordeaux sent. That is why Toulouse is so much better, blah, blah, blah. I think that's all overblown, is my point.
Yeah, perhaps.
Ran over.
It was also a pretty good. It
was quite a good Toulouse team.
It's a good Toulouse team, right? Obviously, they have brilliant depth, but there's some guys there who are, there's of that 23, there's quite a few who would play in a top 14 final.
I think players
it's not like that La Rochelle game months ago.
No, I think players actually fully rested were basically Malia, Willis, and Aki.
The cross player?
Cross played, yeah, and Marchand, which is understandable because they've only got one hooker, really, or one main hooker. But they were all the other guys were all on the bench, and Entermac went off injured. So it was like, they've got injuries to Ramos, Kinghorn. So yeah, it wasn't a full shags. And Remu went off, which is so Capuozzo went to 15, Barassi came onto the wing, and that was why they had to play Grau at 10 because they didn't really. But yeah, they still. I mean, it was kind of weird. It was kind of like the opposite of the last week. It's like, oh no, they can all just slot in at some sort of position and be good, whatever. Capuozzo was great.
Yeah, his form.
For a man that supposedly broke his leg like
pretty
4
remarkable.
weeks ago.
Yeah, I think that rounds it off. Where do we want to? We've sort of semi-previewed some of like the state of play and some of next week's antics. Cast have to travel to Bordeaux, which I dare say might be a good week to go to the Chaban Delmas.
Especially with all the
what's coming up the
well.
week afterwards. So yeah, maybe a little glimmer there. Where are we looking at the bottom? That's where it's interesting, isn't it? Stade Francais host Lyon, which
I mean, we talked about what team are Lyon going to send. They've got to win that. They're not going to win away at Clermont, and they've got a tough one potentially with Cast in the final one,
depending on the state of play in particular.
Yeah,
it's interesting that I know we're a couple of weeks ago, but that last round does feel like a lot of how that goes could as it often is, like hinges on what comes before it. Do you guys get like particularly for the top 6 of Cast are scrapping for a barrage place? Yeah, probably fancy it.
Like Perpignan,
Toulouse
could be lucky. They host Toulouse. Toulouse could send the kids, and Perpignan should be enough if they're fighting for their lives because of the physicality they've got. I think the interesting one that obviously a side that we've not spoken about loads this week for obvious reasons, but Clermont are currently 4 points behind La Rochelle and Montpellier, so they are with a game in hand. But the teams they play, they've got Perpignan at home. They then have their game away at Cast. They then play Stade Francais at home, and they go to Montpellier. So I think Montpellier and Clermont play a lot of the teams in and around them. Montpellier go to La Rochelle next week. So it's kind of like that barrage is going to be interesting because they're all kind of playing each other, which is, I know that's kind of law of averages when there's like 4 or 5 teams in the mix, but
particularly so it's particularly squeezed.
What do you think? So Perpignan go away to Clermont next week, and Van go away to Bayonne. So that is clearly the week for Stade to get a win to jump up above those two sides. Cards on the table, Richard. Who finishes second?
Second bottom.
No,
second. Or second.
3 games to go.
I think Toulon.
I think Toulon purely
because Bordeaux
game.
have got their eye on, well, because of that game, but also they will host Bordeaux the week after. They potentially, Northampton will have a big say, but potentially win a Champions Cup final.
Well, either way, that's at the Mile where they're unbeaten in the top 14, and it's after a game, whereas Toulon will have a break. I think that's the key one.
Yeah, I think that's probably the kicker.
Barrage is going to therefore be Bordeaux, Bayonne, and who else? Cast and
Rochelle. La Rochelle play 2 home games. I think that's probably what it'll be.
I think it could well be La Rochelle, which is remarkable. Bottom 3, how's it finishing?
All of
this will be wrong. We should say to listeners, this will be entirely wrong.
So look at the last 3. So I think it will be a Van coming bottom. I think it's going to be really tight, but I think it's going to be Van and then Perpignan in the access match place, and then Stade just to squeak out that by virtue of having a couple of home games in that last 3. And where have Perpignan got to go the week after? They've got to go to La Rochelle, as you mentioned.
So I think 1 win for Perpignan being the last game, I reckon. I think
1 win for Perpignan, 1 win for Van.
Being Pau,
and I think 2 wins for Stade Francais.
You reckon they'll beat Cast on the last day?
Yeah, I do. I think there's a decent chance Cast might already have their 6th place by then.
I think Perpignan may get enough bonus points. I think it will finish Van 14th, Stade Francais 13th, Perpignan 12th. I just think Perpignan have got more about them, as I said earlier, and Stade don't. / I'm also hoping. That's kind of what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
More of hope.
Yeah, who knows?
Expectation.
Who knows? Right, that's plenty on the top 14. Shall we give it a sec and discuss some ProD2, Nationale, etc.?
Ladies, you'll end up shopping for your guy's deodorant, right? So try Degree's Original Cool Rush. You see, last year, Degree changed the formula, and men were mad. One guy even started a petition. So Degree admitted they messed up and brought the Original Cool Rush scent back. It's clean, crisp, and actually smells like someone you want to cuddle. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So toss one in your cart and find out why it's the best-selling men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory.
Okay, as ever, before we look at the state of play in ProD2, there's been some real moves in Nationale and kind of associated leagues, if you want to call it that. So Nationale will have a Niort from up near, actually pretty close to La Rochelle. They beat Stade Francais, who obviously had a bit of a nightmare season in Nationale. Opens up some potential, if we can ever get a ticket to La Rochelle, opens up a couple of potential double headers there. I think it's like a 35, 40-minute train, which is exciting for the travel-minded among our listeners. In Nationale, though, so Chambéry beat Rouen, as kind of expected. Carcassonne, though, delivered a little bit of a hammering to Narbonne, who were playing at home. They won 40-22. Your man, Johnny McPhillips, was to the fore. So that sets up the final, which will also be played, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago, at Narbonne's ground, where Carcassonne have just done the business. So Chambéry have got to go there and win on kind of, away-ish soil. Carcassonne, you'd imagine, will be in pretty decent numbers given the proximity. The Carcassonne fans were going absolutely bonkers after this one as well. There's obviously a fair bit of feeling in that El Passacord, as it's been monikered. It should set up a bit of a beaut.
Niort are in Nationale, but also we forgot to mention, I think last week, that Rennes are also in Nationale. They won the Nationale 2 final. So with Nationale, depending on the fixtures, depending also on where Van end up, another double header is opened up, because could get a little Friday if Van stay in the top 14, could get a little Friday, Saturday. Alternatively, there's a lot of Nationale games on a Saturday, could get a little Friday night Van, Saturday Rennes, which is quite nice. Bit of Brittany as well. Yeah, so Carcassonne would play, the loser of Chambéry v Carcassonne will play in the access match for ProD2. Anything else on Nationale?
So rumours of talks around some sort of merger between Massy and Suresnes, which obviously Massy we've spoken about a few times, real storied past, an incredible like academy setup, quite the roll call. Suresnes, famous old club. The key thing for me in this, and this probably sounds a bit glib, is any logo, if that were to happen, must continue to contain the Suresnes saxophone. That's probably the key thing for me. But yeah, I have only briefly, I don't think there's a huge amount out there on this. I just saw a little note. I think you retweeted it from Midi Olympique, but
I saw it from Ilted on Blue Sky first. I think actually when we first had Elgin on last summer, he mentioned that he'd nipped down during the World Cup, possibly to that game, and it was pretty spicy. Partly because Cameron Wookie's brother had moved clubs and stuff like that. But I think generally it's just an indication of. So I think it would be from 26-27 season. So it wouldn't be next season. It would be with a view to the following season. I assume. I feel like a financial story in French rugby comes up every week. Like, oh, they're great, but they're also not
particularly
great.
in Nationale. It's slightly haunted league.
It's because of the travel.
Yeah.
So
you need resources, don't you?
You know, and like you've got guys going from Narbonne is right down the bottom, potentially all the way up to Rouen, which is right up the top, or Lille for Malcolm Barrowell. That's a long old way, and they don't have the funding of ProD2 from the TV stuff. I know for like Blognac, it's local. A lot of clubs do well out of local sponsorship because their connections with the local town. Blognac, for example, suffered because they were in the same city as Stade Toulousain, and then not just Stade Toulousain, but Colomiers as well. I imagine the Air possibly struggled because they're in the same proximity as Toulon, possibly, in terms of local funding. So maybe it's something to do with that.
So that does mean that the loser of that final, which will take place this Saturday, I believe, between Carcassonne and Chambéry. How could I forget Chambéry, the coming force of French rugby? The loser of that will play the access match, which will take place the weekend after. And it's not confirmed as yet that will be our boys Aurillac, who
clung on,
having actually taken a bit of a lead against Nevers, but fair play to go to Nevers, which is sold out, I read, at the Pré Fleury, I think it's called.
Well, Nevers on a week that Nevers would have been surrounded by emotion because of their former player, Josaia Raisuque. Aurillac were 21-6 up at one point, which meant that they also had the bonus point, which would have sucked in Oyonnax. And what I don't understand is it's not done on wins. Wins counts for nothing. So we've spoken a while back about how Aurillac had more wins than a lot of people, but hadn't got the bonus points, and that's why they were lower down the league. But it doesn't count for anything. So it's all done on the head-to-head, and Oyonnax's points difference on the head-to-head. So it's one each, but I think Oyonnax won one of the games by like 10 points, and then Aurillac won it by like a couple. So on the head-to-head, Oyonnax have superiority. They are 5 points ahead of Aurillac. So even if they get nothing and Aurillac get a bonus point,
can't be cool.
They'll be level on points, but Oyonnax retain the kind of prevalence. So they are safe. They secured their safety with nothing really, by virtue of Nevers denying Aurillac a win. Was basically the reason why Oyonnax are safe. They did nothing themselves. Bonus point. Yeah. Aurillac obviously got the win, but 2 tries in the second half from Nevers meant that 3 tries to 2, so no bonus point. But they did cling on, and it does go into a final week, which is great.
Yeah, and the other team potentially in the drop zone, or the access max zone at least, Agen, who lost by a solitary point, as if to continue that tightness. Yeah, they came out the other side of a 1-point win away at Dax, who are also, they're up in 9th, which is nice for them. That is a squeezed middle after those kind of barrage spots, but yeah, they live to fight another day, I should say.
Just on the bottom, so it was pretty tight at half time between Stade Montois and Valence Romans. It was 14 all at half time. So at that point, I think, at half time, because of the bonus point for Aurillac, Stade Montois could still get sucked into it, but they ran away with it second half. They ran in loads of tries and secured their status for another year. So yeah, well done, Stade Montois. Good result there. against the form Valence side. But the barrage is, it's all done. It's now all done because of, again, the head-to-heads, I think.
Yeah, so we've got the Thursday night game was the massive one, wasn't it? Which was Montauban-Béziers, which in the end was pretty comfortable, 42-17. And yeah, that puts Montauban a full 5 points clear of Béziers. And I don't think on that head-to-head they can be, did Béziers win the return fixture? I imagine that margin of victory probably does for them, right?
Yeah, pretty disappointing for Béziers because to allow Montauban the bonus point win quite easily, to be fair. 2 tries for Montauban for Josaia Raisuque, who I think might have been in the squad over some of the sevens, but tribute to Josaia. Yeah, he's had a really good season after a bit of a mixed bag last year, but he kind of dedicated a couple of tries to Josaia Raisuque, and also he's kind of got a little shrine in his house that I saw on social media. He's got a little kind of photo up and some flowers, and yeah, really nice. It's really heartbreaking actually to see the kind of tribute that he's got up in his house, but nice for him to get a couple of tries. And an unreal try from JT Jackson. I think the simplicity of it from Montauban was nice. There'll be more flair or audacious tries, but Montauban, when they click, they are playing some lovely rugby. Talking about teams that play some lovely rugby, our boys, Soya Angoulême, they were down at halftime at home to Oyonnax, who obviously hammered them earlier on in the season. They were 16-15 down at halftime, I think it was. 17-16, sorry. And a second half onslaught. But the story here, with his second, third, and fourth tries of the season, he's played a lot of games. Johnny May, he must have listened to last week's podcast and been like, well, I'm a British player playing in France. I deserve to be in that French Lions team that you've made at Rosbeefs. But yeah, I mean, he looked off the pace when we saw him earlier in January.
I think he was injured, wasn't he? He looked like he was injured, I'm pretty sure.
But great for him to get a hat trick and kind of remind everyone that he's a hell of a player. Oyonnax, lackluster again, second half.
Proper forgettable season for Oyonnax.
But they've scraped it. They don't an undeserved scraping of but yeah, so Soya Angoulême get to, just to finish up on the barrage stuff. Soya Angoulême are in 5th on 80. Provence ran out really early on against Biarritz. Biarritz on the beach. They will almost literally be on the beach next week at home. George North was really good first half. He scored a try. Jimmy Gopperth played really, really well, but they stretched out a lead really early on, and Biarritz were never really in it. They got 5 points at home so Provence got 5 points. That takes them to 82. Colomiers were down at half time to Nice as well, similar to Soya Angoulême, and they also ran away with it second half and scored some brilliant tries, as you might expect from Colomiers. Raisuque has been one of I think he might be in the shortlist for player of the season because he's been so key for them, gets them over the gain line, plays basically every week for Colomiers. He's the kind of big grunt to allow a lot of the pace that they have out wide. Brett Heron going pretty well from a Rosbeef perspective, going pretty well at Colomiers. Yeah. But yeah, 14-12 down at half time to 46-19. So Colomiers secure. They are the only team so far to have secured a home barrage with that 5 point win. They go to 86. The big thing, therefore, is which ones of Provence and Soya Angoulême will get the 4th spot. And that is particularly big because Provence, with that win last week, went 15 from 15 at Stade Maurice David this season, which you would think in a barrage match counts for quite a lot to be unbeaten at home. Not only unbeaten, but obviously in ProD2 with the amount of draws we get to have been 15 wins from 15. Interestingly, Provence go away to Oyonnax. Soya Angoulême go away to Valence Romans. Which one of those teams do you think will get a win, if not both? So the head-to-head will go to Provence because they had that wild game where they scored it was like 70 points to 50 or whatever it was, wasn't it? And then the other was shamefully a draw. So the head-to-head will go Provence's way. So Saxvini 3 points more.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can see that happening, to be honest.
Away at Valence Romans.
No.
Best away record in the league, though.
Yeah, I think
Provence not great away.
Yeah, when you kind of
I think Oyonnax
at this end of the
might
season,
win,
though, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Oyonnax might win, and I think Soya Angoulême could easily win. Valence got nothing.
They could, they could. Nor have Oyonnax. So
yeah,
well, yeah, I don't know. It feels it's quite finely poised, but you're right. Like the importance of that home fixture is going to be enormous.
And actually, weirdly, Montauban away at Aurillac in the underground, they might want to not win. Because if I was Montauban, I would much rather go an hour down the road to Colomiers
than
away
Provence.
than to go to Provence.
Yeah, and the
Does that,
chances, can they get a home? I don't think they can they?
Well, they're 5 points behind.
They're 5 points, but it's very unlikely, right, that they're going to get. They're going to get much
presumably
out of that.
the head-to-head, Provence will have won one of the games because it's
more
a home record.
Does that bring? Because that's kind of for me where eyes are, right? Aurillac win that, and Agen are also at home, but they take on Stade Montois, who I guess don't have a huge amount to play for, but have been fabulously unpredictable, as we've discussed at various points in the year. If there were a team to, for some reason, decide this was one to turn up for, maybe it's Mont de Marsan. I don't know, but I think we do know that Aurillac have to win.
Aurillac have to win, and Agen I think a draw would do them. Montauban actually on the head-to-head with Provence are up by about 4 points.
Okay.
But I think they are down on the head-to-head against Soy-en-Galem. So basically, they are 3 points behind Soy-en-Galem. There's an outside shot, assuming that both Provence and Soy-en-Galem lose and they get an attacking bonus point, that they could get a home barrage, but I think they might as well just bank their chips and try and get the Colomiers one.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you.
I don't know about that bottom one. I think Aurillac will win. I think the fact they got out to a good lead away at Nevers shows that they're fighting.
Yeah.
Agen, I think they've lost 4 in a row now or something like that. I don't know. I really don't know. Which way is it going? I just think they were so poor. They were so poor at home to Soy-en-Galem. They were clearly a pretty stodgy game. They were terrible away at Colomiers before that.
Yeah, they've won some decent games at home, and they do have some quality there. Oh, but I want to back the Lac. Maybe I'll have to back the Lac to win the access match next week.
I think I could well see Agen losing. I could well see Agen going into the access match.
The fallout of that could be something else, couldn't it?
I maybe again it's like with Perpignan and Stade Francais. I just want to see the bigger team
be a bit uncomfortable.
I want to see the pending implosion off the field. Philippe Sella et al.
We'll see. Bit of Rosbiff representation at Agen though. So
yeah, they've definitely struggled since Billy Searle got injured. They had barely won a game, I think, since he got injured and his season got ended. So yeah, tough one.
Oh, it's so nervy. It's come down at the end of this marathon 30-round season. It's come down to the last round. So
it's also mad that we're at the end, but we're not at the end. I was thinking that last week. Like there's still like 3 or 4 weeks to go on ProD2 before we know anything. We didn't even talk about top of league. I think there's a chance that Brive could finish top, which is interesting. After they beat Grenoble off the top of the table for the first time in ages, but they will almost certainly get a bonus point win, and Brive might not because they are going away. So I think Grenoble could well end up top.
I think so.
Experience a progressive lens engineered with AI from Essilor, powered by individual measurements of your visual behavior. A lens personalized to you by an Essilor expert. Discover Verilux XR Track and enjoy instantly sharp vision in motion and seamless transitions from near to far. Find your local Essilor expert today at essilor.com.
Rob, to wrap us up, any Petit-Fours, anything to take us into this final week of ProD2 and another round?
Well, I had obviously a sad week at Cast. I did see, I don't know when it was from. I think it might have been from this week. It might have been from before the tragic passing of Josaia Raisuque. It was on TikTok, and it was Christian Ambadiang ringing people using Siri. And I couldn't work out whose phone it was, but he was basically like on Siri going, ring so-and-so. And it was just basically like the changing room was clearing out because all these blokes were like picking up their phone, looking a bit confused and walking out the changing room, just like, hello, bonjour, which I found. And the caption was like, don't leave your phone near Christian, which I quite enjoyed. I did see Jérôme Ray. I saw a nice clip, the Lyon prop who made our team of the season last year. Nice little long form clip on Instagram of him talking about his farm up in the Savoie, and he's got cows. I think he's got sheep, some pigs, a few chickens, talking about how farming helps him with the separation from rugby. It's a very different atmosphere to rugby, helps him switch off. Very much in the Alistair Cook, Julian White mould, maybe.
Nice.
The one that I saw with very high production video was from rugby club Garches Vaucresson, who are in the outskirts of Paris, just beyond Nanterre. I think they just lost they're in Regional 1, and I think they just lost the access match to get into Fédéral 3. But they've got a new coach next year. They couldn't get a dual license for him to play, but one of their coaches will be Romain Briat, the Stade Francais player.
That's cool.
I wondered if it was like a former club, but he's from Riom, which is near Clermont-Ferrand. So he played for Clermont and Aurillac. So he's clearly from like the Cantal, Auvergne region.
Yeah.
So it's nothing. I think it's just
nice.
Interesting. He's kind of 32, 33, I think. So back end of his career, but very good video. It was kind of like followed him out and it's like a new signing and it was kind of looked like it could have been high production. That's it in terms of fun stuff, I guess. Did see a rumour, a player that we've talked about should go to France. Ben Spencer to Racing was the rumour I saw. And we know that is bollocks because we are almost certain that Owen Farrell hates Ben Spencer, given that Ben Spencer should have had a much longer England career. The only reason why he can clearly not have played for England as much as he should is because Owen Farrell doesn't rate him. So presumably why he didn't get the Lions tour as well. But yeah, Ben Spencer to Racing is a rumour. I doubt that would go. Lyon made a lot of contract extensions, not necessarily big name players, but their squad players: Carbesh, Théo William, Chapchet, Parisian, Dumortier, Meliond, who's a bit of a mixed bag, I think, and Maracou, who I think is really good. Him and Théo William, probably the best re-signings of those. But that's all I've seen. I'm quite quiet weeks for transfers, I feel.
Yeah.
Where we are in the season.
I haven't seen too much. I do know that the final of the women's Elite 1 Féminin will take place at the Marcel Michelin on the 31st of May as a double header between, so it'll be Stade Bordelais, but that'll be the opener to a double header with Clermont and Stade Francais, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
I feel that happened earlier in the year at the Marcel Michelin as well. There was another, they had another double header.
Yeah,
I think it was a sellout. But that's pretty cool. Bruce Houston, you may not have heard of, but he is a fly half for Cornish Pirates, and he is joining Bourg-en-Bresse in Nationale next year.
Niche.
Which is cool. I also saw, I don't know if you saw the ridiculous Nolan Le Garrec Shistera.
Yeah.
That was genuinely quite outrageous.
With a cricket emoji on his Instagram.
With a cricket bat emoji. Yes, nor could I, but that was my news there. I don't know what the cricket link is with Le Garrec. I mean, the pass is amazing, and you don't have to go too far to find it because it looks like Nolan Le Garrec is replastering it across pretty much every corner of social media he can find, which, you know what, why not? And then the final thing was just a shout out to a few. We've had some really good emails in recently from various listeners, and we've managed to set up a couple of people with tickets and stuff, which has been really cool. But particular shout out to Reese and Kerry, who are travelling to Pau this weekend and are going to see Pau v Toulon. Rob, I know you provided a series of recommendations, but Kerry followed up with an email just to highlight the well, obviously the Stade de Hameau is fantastic, but is it as good as the Stade Bernard du Camp, where Morsonx will be playing Mérignac?
Yeah,
which is Mérignac is the airport, right?
Yes.
Bordeaux,
yeah,
Mérignac.
You're right. Yeah.
But crucially as well, the little look into the menu for the day: €20, full sit-down meal with the supporters club, including a main course of wild boar, followed by cheeses, coffee or chocolate eclair, and a sort of mixed plate up top with some salads, etc. So yes, that sounds.
Oh my God, that is
like
magical, isn't it?
Exactly the sort of thing we want to be pushing on this. So if you happen to find yourself in the
Laund,
in that part of town, yeah, go and get yourself a sit-down meal. Second leg game.
I know where Morsonx is, because when I was trying to map out Bayonne to Mont-de-Marsan, it's where you go through on the train.
Yes,
despite being a really obvious train route, you do have to go via Morsonx. And I would say, having seen the Laund derby between Dax and Mont-de-Marsan, where literally everyone at the ground looked like they could be a professional rugby player, that is rugby country. You've also, but you didn't mention the programme, the Petit Déjeuner des Phases Finales at 10 a.m. There's a breakfast.
I've missed that
at the Stade, and an aperitif at 11:30.
It's proper.
Before the rep-out, before the main meal at 12 o'clock. That is amazing.
Yeah, that's real stuff, isn't it?
Hopefully we'll hear back from that.
Few photos, few reports. I'm very much looking forward to it. But that is me done for Petit-Fours this week, Rob.
Yeah, what a way to finish with
perfect
10 a.m. breakfast, an aperitif, and a lunch of wild boar and cheese. And a chocolate eclair.
Splendid stuff.
Brilliant.
But do follow us, get in touch on social media. Do email us, rosbiffrugby@gmail.com. Let's say some of the emails we've had have been fantastic.
Share us widely. Share us. Click share wherever you see our stuff. That's the big one, I think. And tell your mates. Give us a review on iTunes or Spotify if you haven't already. We want to hear from you, though. So rosbiffrugby@gmail.com, or we are at rosbiffrugby on all social media.
We'll be there, lingering. All right, ProD2 dinner final round is here. Enjoy that. Enjoy the continuation of the top 14 as excitement builds for the week after, and Lyon, Bordeaux in Europe. There's so much great rugby, even as we enter the summer. So keep listening to Rosbiff Rugby. I've been Richard. That has been Rob. We've been the Rosbiffs. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.